The snowstorm descended that night, wild and untamed, like a feral beast ravaging everything in its path. The once clear road leading to the quaint town of Everbrook was buried beneath a thick, unforgiving blanket of snow. Howling winds tore through the air, shattering the stillness of the night with a deafening roar. Nathaniel Blake gripped the steering wheel of his sleek car, his knuckles white from the effort to maintain control. The road, now a sheet of treacherous ice, turned every mile into a battle. His skill behind the wheel was no match for the storm's fury, and a sharp turn proved disastrous. The tires skidded helplessly before the car careened off the road, slamming into a towering tree with a bone-jarring crash. Inside the crumpled vehicle, the dashboard clock blinked steadily, marking each passing second in eerie contrast to the chaos outside. The bitter cold seeped through Nathaniel's coat, biting into his skin. Blood trickled down his temple, warm against the icy sting, and a sharp pain radiated from his side. His vision blurred, and his strength began to wane as the cold tightened its grip. A single thought crossed his fading consciousness. Was this the end? Just as darkness threatened to consume him entirely, a faint silhouette emerged from the storm's wrath. Footsteps crunched through the snow, and then a gentle, urgent voice pierced the chaos. "Hold on. You're going to be okay. I'm here." Those were the last words Nathaniel heard before succumbing to unconsciousness. When he awoke, he was enveloped in warmth, the soft glow of a bedside lamp illuminating the modest room. The faint scent of antiseptic lingered in the air, and his body ached as if he had endured a fierce battle. As he tried to sit up, a pair of gentle but firm hands pressed him back down. "You're awake. Don't try to move too quickly," said a soothing voice. Turning his head, Nathaniel saw the woman beside him. Her soft brown hair was neatly tied back, and her striking blue eyes radiated calmness, though a shadow of unspoken sadness lingered within them. For a moment, he wondered if she was real or merely a figment of his hazy mind. "I'm Clara Hayes," she introduced herself, her voice steady and comforting. "I'm a volunteer doctor here. You were in a car accident on your way to Everbrook, but you're safe now." Nathaniel glanced around the room, taking in its modest simplicity: a small bed, a cabinet stocked with medical supplies, and a wooden table. Yet, despite its austerity, the space felt warm, almost welcoming, in a way his life hadn't for years. "How long have I been here?" he croaked, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Almost a day," Clara replied, her smile gentle as she adjusted the bandage on his forehead. "You had a head injury and some bruising on your side, but nothing too serious." There was something about Clara's presence, her warmth, her sincerity, that unsettled Nathaniel. Accustomed to a world of cold transactions and calculated relationships, he found himself strangely comforted by her kindness. It was a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to experience in years. During the 4 days Nathaniel spent at Clara's clinic, recovering from his injuries, a bond began to form between them. Clara, who usually kept a safe distance from others, found herself unusually at ease in Nathaniel's company. She shared her story: a once promising surgeon at a prestigious city hospital, her career had been her entire identity until a complex surgery ended in tragedy. Although the outcome wasn't her fault, the media frenzy and public backlash had been merciless. The weight of it all had shattered her confidence, driving her to leave her old life behind and find solace in the quiet isolation of Everbrook. Nathaniel listened intently, deeply moved by her resilience. In turn, he opened up about his own struggles, the hollowness of his success as a CEO of a powerful corporation. Despite his wealth, influence, and the endless accolades, his life felt devoid of purpose, every achievement merely a fleeting distraction from a gnawing emptiness. One evening, as the snowstorm raged outside, the two sat by the fireplace in the small clinic. The warm, flickering light cast a golden glow over their faces, creating an intimacy neither could ignore. "Do you ever regret the path you chose?" Clara asked, her gaze distant as she stared out the frosted window. Nathaniel paused, his voice quiet when he finally spoke. "Not exactly. But I've never felt it was enough. I think I've been searching for something more, something I didn't even know I was missing. Until I met you." His words took Clara by surprise, her composure faltering as her heart wavered. She had built walls to protect herself, but something about Nathaniel had broken through. That night, as the storm howled outside, they gave in to the emotions they had been holding back. A soft kiss turned into a night of raw vulnerability, the walls between them crumbling entirely. The next morning, an urgent call from Nathaniel's company shattered the fragile peace they had found. He had to leave immediately. Before departing, he promised Clara he would return. She stood at the doorway watching him disappear into the snow-covered distance, a growing unease settling in her heart. Days turned into weeks, and Clara tried to resume her routine at the clinic, but life soon delivered an unexpected revelation: she was pregnant. The news left her reeling. Thoughts of Nathaniel and his promise swirled in her mind, but fear crept in as well. Could she trust him to return? Could she trust herself to face him? While sorting through the belongings Nathaniel had left behind, Clara found a business card. Her breath caught as she read his name: Nathaniel Blake, CEO of Blake Medical Innovations. He wasn't just wealthy, he was the head of a global medical corporation, a man whose influence extended far beyond anything she could have imagined. As if that revelation wasn't enough, an article surfaced online, throwing her already tumultuous emotions into further chaos. A few days later, Clara came across an article that shattered her fragile resolve. It revealed an even more devastating truth: Nathaniel Blake was engaged to Evelyn Prescott, the daughter of a powerful and influential family. Their union, as the article explained, was not born of love but was a calculated alliance to strengthen the power and prestige of both families. Clara felt her world collapse beneath the weight of this revelation. "He belongs to a world I could never be part of," she whispered to herself, the words trembling on her lips. Worse still, a gnawing fear gripped her. If her past medical failure ever resurfaced, it could not only ruin Nathaniel's reputation but also cast a harsh, unforgiving light on the peaceful future she envisioned for her unborn child. The thought of dragging Nathaniel and their baby into the unforgiving glare of public scrutiny filled her with dread. Overwhelmed by fear and the pressure of her circumstances, Clara made the heart-wrenching decision to leave Everbrook. She penned a brief letter to the clinic, explaining only that she needed to start anew somewhere far away. No one knew the real reason for her departure. No one knew that the small suitcase she carried held not just her belongings but a life-altering secret: she was pregnant with Nathaniel's child. In the quiet stillness of the early morning, Clara slipped away from Everbrook. The biting chill of dawn mirrored the pain in her heart as she walked away from the place where her life had changed so profoundly. Every step felt like a dagger, each one carving a deeper wound into her soul. Back in the city, Nathaniel resumed his high-powered life of meetings, events, and grand parties. But nothing felt the same. The warmth and simplicity of his days in Everbrook lingered in his mind like a haunting melody. Clara's voice, her touch, her presence, they consumed his thoughts, leaving him restless and hollow. Even though he was engaged to Evelyn Prescott, Nathaniel's heart was elsewhere. Evelyn, radiant and poised at every gala and gathering, seemed the epitome of the perfect partner. But their relationship was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated arrangement. "You're still thinking about her, aren't you?" Evelyn asked one evening, her voice calm but tinged with knowing. The tabloids had already begun speculating about Nathaniel's distant behavior, hinting at a mystery woman he couldn't forget. Nathaniel didn't deny it. "We both know this was never about love," he replied quietly. Unable to continue the charade, Nathaniel broke off the engagement, much to the dismay of their families. Free from the pretense, he began an unrelenting search for Clara. He hired investigators, followed leads, and chased rumors, but she seemed to have vanished, leaving no trace behind. Meanwhile, Clara had built a new life, moving from one small town to another, working in humble community clinics where no one recognized her name. Her days revolved around her son, Elijah. With his soft brown hair and striking blue eyes, a mirror of Nathaniel's, Elijah was the light of her life. He was curious, kind, and full of energy, filling Clara's days with joy even as she carried the heavy burden of her past. On quiet nights, when Elijah was fast asleep, Clara often found herself gazing out the window, her thoughts drifting to Nathaniel. Did he think of her? Did he miss her as much as she missed him? For 5 long years, Nathaniel searched tirelessly, his hope dimming with each passing day. Then, during a business trip to sponsor a charity event in a small, unassuming town, fate intervened. Nathaniel's eyes caught sight of a young boy sitting in the corner of a courtyard, drawing with quiet concentration. Something about the boy struck him deeply. His bright blue eyes, so familiar, so achingly familiar, sent a jolt through Nathaniel's chest. His heart pounded as he approached, his voice steady but trembling with emotion. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The boy looked up, his innocent smile lighting up his face. "Elijah," he said simply. Nathaniel froze. The name struck him like a thunderbolt, a name he had once dreamed of for his future child. Before he could ask more, a familiar voice called out, tinged with both warmth and worry. "Elijah, what are you doing here?" Nathaniel turned, his breath catching in his throat. Clara stood there, just as he remembered her, though her face bore a faint weariness he hadn't seen before. Their eyes met, and in that instant, the emotions they had buried for 5 long years surged to the surface, raw and unrelenting. "Clara," Nathaniel whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief and longing. Clara's face paled as she instinctively stepped forward, pulling Elijah behind her protectively. Her voice wavered as she spoke. "Nathaniel, what are you doing here?" Nathaniel's gaze darted between Clara and the boy. His voice was soft but filled with urgency. "Elijah, he's my son, isn't he?" The question hung in the air like a thundercloud, heavy with emotion. Clara's heart raced, her mind a whirlwind of fear and regret. After a long, painful silence, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "You didn't tell me," Nathaniel said, his voice a mix of anguish and frustration. "For 5 years. I didn't know. I didn't know I had a son." Tears welled in Clara's eyes and spilled down her cheeks. "I was scared, Nathaniel. Scared of what would happen if my past caught up with me, scared of what it would do to you, to your reputation. Scared of what kind of life Elijah would have in your world. A world of judgment, scrutiny, and constant pressure. I couldn't let that happen to him." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, his emotions raw and unguarded. "You didn't trust me," he said, his voice breaking. "You thought I wouldn't protect you, or him. I gave up everything to find you. And now you're telling me I wasn't worthy of knowing my own child?" Clara bowed her head, her voice trembling. "I didn't run away because of you, Nathaniel. I ran because I couldn't face that world again. I wanted to protect Elijah from it." Nathaniel's expression softened, the anger fading from his eyes. He stepped closer, his voice gentler now. "Clara, I understand your pain. But we can't let the past define us. I can't let my son grow up without a father, and I can't let you carry this alone anymore." Elijah, standing between them, looked up at his mother, then at Nathaniel. His wide, curious eyes, so full of innocence, seemed to bridge the unspoken divide between them. A few days later, Clara stumbled upon an article that shook her to her core. It revealed a truth more devastating than she could have imagined. Nathaniel Blake was engaged to Evelyn Prescott, the poised and elegant daughter of a powerful family. Their engagement, as the article detailed, was not one of romance but of strategy, a calculated alliance to unite 2 influential dynasties. Clara's heart shattered. "He belongs to a world I'll never be part of," she whispered, the words heavy with resignation. But it wasn't just heartbreak that consumed her, it was fear. If her past medical failure ever resurfaced, it wouldn't only tarnish Nathaniel's reputation, it could destroy the peaceful life she wanted for her unborn child. She couldn't bear the thought of dragging her baby into the ruthless world of power and scrutiny that Nathaniel came from. The weight of it all became unbearable. Overwhelmed by fear and love for her child, Clara made the most painful decision of her life. She wrote a brief letter to the clinic, claiming she needed to leave Everbrook to start anew, never mentioning the true reason for her departure. In the stillness of dawn, with nothing but a small suitcase and a heart full of secrets, Clara left the town she had once thought would be her refuge. As the sun rose, Clara boarded a bus bound for nowhere in particular. Every mile she traveled away from Everbrook felt like a fresh wound, the distance between her and Nathaniel widening not just in space but in hope. Yet, she convinced herself it was the only way to protect her unborn baby, and Nathaniel, from the storm her past could unleash. Back in the city, Nathaniel returned to his meticulously structured life. He attended meetings, posed for photographs at grand galas, and navigated the social expectations of his engagement to Evelyn. But none of it felt real. Everbrook lingered in his memory like a haunting dream, and the thought of Clara was an ache that never left him. Her laughter, her kindness, her quiet strength, they consumed his thoughts, making everything else feel hollow. Though he was engaged, Nathaniel's heart was elsewhere. Evelyn, with her flawless poise and radiant beauty, was everything his world admired. Yet their relationship was nothing but a business arrangement, a union built on mutual benefit rather than affection. "You're still thinking about her, aren't you?" Evelyn's voice was calm, tinged with a quiet knowing as she confronted him one evening. Nathaniel didn't deny it. "This was never about love," he admitted, his voice steady but distant. Unable to continue living a lie, Nathaniel ended the engagement. His decision scandalized both families, but he didn't care. Free from the weight of expectations, he began searching for Clara. He hired investigators, scoured towns, and chased every lead, but she seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Meanwhile, Clara had created a quiet life for herself and her son. Moving from one small town to another, she worked at community clinics where no one knew her name. Her days revolved around Elijah, the boy who had become her entire world. With his soft brown hair and piercing blue eyes, so much like Nathaniel's, Elijah was a constant reminder of the love she had left behind. Elijah was curious, playful, and full of life. His laughter lit up their modest home, bringing Clara solace even as her heart ached for what could have been. But on nights when the house was silent, she often found herself staring out the window, wondering if Nathaniel ever thought of her. Did he long for her the way she longed for him? For 5 years Nathaniel searched, his hope waning with each passing day. Then, during a business trip to sponsor a charity event in a small, unassuming town, fate intervened. In the courtyard of the event venue, Nathaniel noticed a young boy sitting cross-legged, drawing intently. Something about the child's bright blue eyes struck him like a lightning bolt. His heart pounded as he approached, his voice trembling. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The boy looked up, his innocent smile lighting up his face. "Elijah," he replied. Nathaniel froze. The name hit him like a tidal wave. It was the name he had once dreamed of for his future child. Before he could say more, a familiar voice called out. "Elijah, what are you doing?" Nathaniel turned and there she was, Clara. Her face was exactly as he remembered, though there was a quiet weariness in her eyes. Their gazes locked and for a moment time stood still. "Clara," he breathed, his voice trembling with disbelief. Clara's face paled as she instinctively stepped forward, pulling Elijah close. "Nathaniel, what are you doing here?" His eyes flicked from her to the boy. "Elijah, he's my son, isn't he?" The question hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Clara hesitated, her heart pounding. Finally she gave a small, tearful nod. Nathaniel's voice cracked with emotion. "You didn't tell me. For 5 years I didn't know I had a son." Tears streamed down Clara's cheeks. "I was scared, Nathaniel. Scared of what would happen if my past caught up with me. Scared of what it would do to you, to your reputation, to Elijah. I didn't want him growing up in your world, with its judgment and scrutiny." Nathaniel stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. "Clara, I would have protected you. Both of you. I gave up everything to find you, and now that I have, I'm not letting you go." Elijah, sensing the emotion between them, looked up. "Who are you?" he asked innocently. Nathaniel knelt, his hands trembling as he placed them on the boy's small shoulders. "I'm your father, Elijah," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Elijah glanced at Clara, who gave him a tearful nod. Slowly, the boy stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Nathaniel. In that moment, the weight of 5 years lifted, replaced by the warmth of reunion. Clara watched, her heart swelling with both fear and hope. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "But maybe I was wrong to keep running. If you promise to protect us, I'll try to face it." Nathaniel reached for her hand, his gaze resolute. "We'll face it together. You'll never be alone again."